Hey guys, today I'm going to be finishing up this painting that I started in my last video. I was having technical difficulties and now actually a few days has passed and it's dried a little bit, so that actually offers a few challenges that you may have experienced, and I'll show you how to get through it. So the first thing, oh by the way, my sister-in-law Marilee is behind the camera right now, and she's a professional artist too, and actually I'll put her website down in the link, or yeah, in the description, so you can see her work if you would like to. She's an illustrator, and I think you'll enjoy her work. But right now she's trying to get into oil painting a little bit. She's done it before, and anyway, she's gonna prompt me with a few questions if she feels like I could share something that may be helpful. So
awesome. Hi guys.
She's not gonna hold back. All right. So since I let it dry a little bit, I do need to. Well, I shouldn't say I need to, but I want to clear off some of this high-profile stuff, just so it doesn't get in the way of my brush strokes that I want to look really like immediate. So it feels like I'm messing it up, but I'm just going to paint over it anyway, so it's not really a mess up, it's just helping me. So that's all it is. I'm just trying to get a little bit of that thick stuff off so it doesn't show up underneath. And actually it hasn't dried quite as much as I thought it had, but this'll help a little bit anyway. And since I just really honestly stepped away from this entirely for 3 days, so I didn't actually even clean my brushes until last night, and I've actually permanently ruined one of my brushes, but it's still it's still useful. And this one was on its last leg anyway, so I'm probably gonna throw that away soon anyway. This one was brand new. It happens.
So how long can they sit without getting ruined?
Well, usually only like 2 days before certain parts of it start to dry out. And this one I knew I was not gonna, so on Sunday I came in and like dipped them in the paint thinner just so they wouldn't dry out entirely, and I think that's what saved it from being completely like throwaway. But you can see it's still supple, it's still soft, so this, even though it's stained and it technically has all this dried paint down below, it still works. And you know, now it kind of matches the rest of my brushes. I buy expensive brushes and then I treat them really poorly, and I don't know why I do that. All right, so to clean off my glass palette, I've got a little razor blade. It's not the best thing in the world to leave a palette like this, but on glass palettes it's really, really easy to clear off. I just hold it at a pretty sharp angle and just scrape it off. And honestly, it's kind of fun. Not that I try to do this, but it is kind of, there's something satisfying about scraping a palette. If you have a wood palette, this would never work. You'd pick up shards or like splinters in the wood, so you can't do it this way, and you want to be a little bit more careful about cleaning a wooden palette before you let it dry. Some artists use these in their paintings. I think they're kind of cool, but I can't find a use for them yet.
Those are cool. So you like glass palette then, probably for ease of cleaning?
Well, I actually kind of prefer a wooden palette because once it's oiled and you've built up a lot of layers of thin oil, it just becomes really a nice texture. It's kind of the same as like the feeling of painting on linen, which I don't always do, which we talked about yesterday. You know, it's expensive, but yeah, painting on a wood palette is just
a nice
texture. Yeah. Okay, so getting into the painting. So I think the first thing I'll do is just fix the parts that I messed up here. I'm mixing a little bit of brown and red and black. Not trying to get anything exact. And for those of you who didn't watch the last video, I'm recreating this barn and this scene, but with this type of this time of year for a friend and client. So one thing I noticed actually, and one of the reasons I wasn't too afraid of scraping this, is I noticed I want to kind of change the the location of the center of that barn. And I'm kind of doing this just as a block in, not worrying too much about my brush strokes at the moment. Kind of just a dry brush. This is just to help myself like remember where it should go, so I don't get too far along again and forget to fix that. Just grabbing a little bit more of that red and brown, but this time with a little bit more black, just to hit some of the dark parts. I'm always asked about what color to choose. And the truth is, and if you've watched my channel for some time, you know I always say this, is that I never know. I never know until I've put the color down. I'm always having to like fix the color rather than just know. There's no real way to judge a color unless you've put it down on canvas first.
That makes sense.
Because it could, like this dark part, if I were to paint the whole thing really light, I mean that dark would be gray, you know, or maybe it would have like a bluish filter on it or something like that, you know. I'll hit some of the dark parts here just because I have dark on my brush. Move these windows over to the left a little bit since I moved the side of the barn. I've heard some artists say that oil painting, or probably painting in general, well, not watercolor, anyway, painting is more or less a series of corrections rather than knowing exactly what to do. So you just do something and then you make it a little bit more correct. Because with oils especially, I mean, the best part about it is that you can paint over it.
That's so cool.
I'm sure you can do that with acrylics too, but oils are almost like made for it. Okay, I'm just fixing some things that
Almost like sketching while you're working a little bit.
Kind of, yeah.
But with color.
It's relaxing in a way because I'm not, you know, I mean, in one sense I'm really having to think hard about it, but in another sense I'm kind of just playing, and if I allow myself to play more.
Do you feel like it
usually ends
works
up
better when you're just playing?
Yeah, and it depends on the subject. Like if it's a person, I really have to focus a lot on during some parts and then play the other parts.
For sure,
You know?
yeah.
Because I have some paintings that I've done that I've more or less ruined it because I forgot to play. And it looks stiff, and I kind of hate the painting afterwards. And
Yeah. Just that brought that structure to life. That's impressive.
just having those those darks and lights helps that it now looks like a barn that's not falling down. Okay, I'm just wiping my brush. So a lot of artists will clean off their brush entirely. And actually, Marilee, just for your benefit, because you were asking earlier. So the way I clean off my brush, I don't usually clean it off all the way. I'll just do that first step.
Like in between?
Yeah.
Okay.
Unless I'm going from like...
Just kind of wipe it in the middle of the painting and then later clean it?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
The only time I'll totally wash it off, like I'll show you in a second, is like when I'm going from any color up to like a clean color, like a sky,
yeah, and you need
or
to
a
use
pure
the
white.
same brush.
Yeah.
Okay.
I typically only use one brush unless I'm doing a very detailed part later on.
Because it's like the one you like.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
and this shape actually I really like. Just personal, this is not like a tip or anything, but it's just my personal favorite shape because it.
Okay.
Yeah, this is like an extra long filbert, and I like it because I can spread it out to like a really fat shape here, or I can kind of sharpen it into a.
It has lots of options.
It's kind of a
you can even do little
calligraphy.
lines and whatnot.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Almost like a calligraphy pen.
That's cool.
But yeah, so I'll wipe it off kind of as much as I can without stressing out. And then I like this thing because it has this little coil. And I'll just rub it back and forth and usually wipe it once and then do it again.
Okay.
And so this stuff, This is nice because all the solids float or sink down to the bottom. Then I can dump all that stuff into another jar, and then it'll sink down to that bottom. Then I can pour the new stuff back in
And reuse
later.
it? Gotcha.
So I have a couple jars down there where it's like in the process of settling
Separating,
versus
okay.
clean. And this one's actually ready to be.
What do you do with the paint when it's all separated?
After years and years, it'll build up some sludge, and I'll kind of, if I want to keep my jar,
Yeah.
I'll just scoop it out with a stick or something and throw it away, or toss the jar. But
Right, yeah.
it's funny. The only reason I have that old Ovaltine jar down there is because it's from the 80s.
It's cool.
I've had it that long.
Yeah.
I used to keep my money in it when I was in like middle school. And
Oh, well,
stuff.
now you have to keep it because it's got a cool story.
Right? Yeah, if that ever broke, I'd be really sad. I'm going to take my jacket off. Painting's hard work.
Good exercise.
Yeah. And I know I just said I don't usually change brushes, but I'm going to switch to this slightly stiffer one just so I can lay in some real chunky bits here that look like barnwood.
So stiffer is better. I'm learning this for impasto, I guess. Is that what it is?
Yeah. And I can totally do impasto with this one, but where it's kind of a small area, and I also want these edges to be a little bit more squared off like
Yeah.
barnwood would be. I didn't think that much about it, to be honest. I just thought, like all of that
It
maybe
feels-
went
it
through my
feels
mind
good,
at
yeah.
once. Yeah. Like, yeah, it just feels better. And again, like not overthinking it at all. It's just like, okay, it kind of needs to be red, and so I grab a kind of red color that I think will be pretty close. And it's very different from the color that was already there, but I like when certain colors will show through a little bit, and it doesn't feel like it's too like labored, the decision-making process. I feel like it just adds more life to it. Or better way to say it is like it doesn't add life to it, it like allows the life to show through rather than covering it up.
Yeah. Reveals the life.
Yeah. I like that there's some bright red in there, so kind of interesting. And these are parts where I can kind of design a little bit. I'll throw some white in there just to add variety. Actually, I want that to be more like the weathered wood. When you have very few colors on the palette, I feel like it's a lot easier to make really quick, intuitive choices about color. Because this way, all I have to do is think, well, does it need to be more blue, yellow, red, or darker, lighter,
Right.
instead of thinking, well, does it need to be more olive green or more lime green,
Right.
because that I feel like complicates the decision-making process, and I'm sure that anybody can like get used to their palette, their chosen palette, but this is just my choice. Some artists use a lot of colors and do just fine with it. So just going back and forth with different versions of like this kind of weathered wood look that I'm remembering from this barn down the road and seeing here, of course. And it doesn't have to look like my old painting. I just want it to have the same life as it did. And sometimes, and Annalise has lost my other palette knives. So this is a little bit bigger than I would usually use. But palette knives are really fun to get just different textures. And for the sides of buildings where they are flat, palette knives work really well for that. And if I scrape it, I get a nice, I sharpen up the line or the paint that was on there before. But if I hold it really lightly, almost flat against it, and just kind of drag it, then it gives this awesome, like, scumbling hit and miss effect. Oops, that was a mistake. That's all right. Sometimes mistakes can be worked with, and it'll make it better than it would have been without it. And other times not. Easy to cover up though. So this is an area that's really fun to play with, because you can almost do no wrong in this area. So then the other side of my brain takes over, and it's just like pure creation. Like I can, as long as I stay within these confines, there's not a lot I can do that would ruin it. I'll come back to that a little bit later, but I'm gonna use this and create a more interesting pattern of brush strokes instead of just those 1-2 strokes that I had before. I'll go in and just, and now those 2 strokes are exactly the same as each other, so I don't want that either. So I'll mix up another color and kind of work into it, out of it, you know, back and forth. And this isn't so much like this is the way to paint. It's just this happens to be the way that I paint. But I'm hopefully showing a few different techniques that can be used, you know. And some of these decisions are just to cover the underpainting. And then I work with those decisions. You know, I need a color there. I need something that's a little bit thicker. And since I need it, I might as well just use it to my advantage however I can. And of course, I'll come back to every area. I don't usually finish an area completely before moving on.
I think I have an idea, but why is that?
Yeah. I think it's ultimately like I don't want to stress myself out, like thinking, oh, it has to be done before I move on.
Yeah.
And it might depend on the painting. Like with if it's a large detailed figure, I might actually try to finish the face before I go on it.
Right.
Too far.
That makes
in
sense.
Other places, but I used to do that more often. And I'd have like really detailed face and hands, and then it would get gradually more and more impressionistic as I move away from that. But yeah, so I guess I don't know. I've gotten a little bit more impressionistic overall lately, but it also just, yeah, it just depends on the subject, I'd say. You know, just a couple different ways of working. And so guys, Marilyn and I were talking last night about, and Laura Jean, about how much can you change as an artist and still be like recognized? And I don't know, there's no answer. I don't know if we came up with an answer other than you're you and you have every right to be you. And
and every artist needs to kind of go on a journey, right? And keep challenging themselves.
Yeah, I've changed so much in my career, and I expect I'll continue to change quite a bit. And is that the best business move? Probably not. But does it lead to a happier life? I would say so, probably. Yeah.
Well, and I think your collectors, a lot of them will be interested in that journey.
I think it's more interesting to see a real person behind things rather than. I really do love painting barns because, like, look how many mistakes there are in it. But it's so, I love the mistakes. They're beautiful, and they're not mistakes because of that, you know.
They're so charming.
Yeah. And I really want all my paintings to look that way. Like, I love it when I can surprise myself. Like, I wasn't even trying to make an accurate brushstroke, like in a face especially. Oh my goodness. If you can get a mistake to look correct in a human, oh, it's like magic. It's awesome. Whoops, dropping things everywhere. Okay, so there is snow in that one on the roof as well, and obviously there won't be snow in this one. So I've got some decisions to make. How do I paint the roof? Well, okay, so I can see in here that the roof was just dark, so I think I'll start with that. And because it's going to be on the shadow side, I'm introducing some purple, some of the same purples and blues that I used in the shadows already. On a sunny day, you've got cool shadows. So I'm just choosing a generally dark color here. And I just noticed another mistake in the anatomy of this barn, which I'll have to fix again, but whoops. So just this dark shape, and then I'll have to go in and use a little bit of my knowledge. Since a camera can never pick up the colors anyway, like even if this was a photo of the barn rather than a photo of my painting, I just know from some experience painting outside that the things that are in shadow, that are reflecting light from the whole sky, you know, they're going to be generally blue, and the more they're facing upward towards that blue sky, the more they're, anyway, whatever something is facing, it's going to pick up those colors more. And I definitely want this plane to look different than this one, but I'm experimenting in the moment right now. Not quite sure which direction I want to go. I want to move that up even higher. It's a nice little chimney in here that I want to also make sure and get in there. So if you can't tell by now, most of my decisions in painting are made as quickly as possible without thinking it. I think I've said that a few times, but I can't overemphasize that enough. Well, I guess can't emphasize it enough. Just play with it and have fun. And try to make once you've made a decision, act on it quickly. Don't think about it too much. I feel like painting should be a little bit intuitive. I don't like thinking too much about, like, well, how much yellow should I put in this to make it feel warm, this brush stroke that I'm putting on down. I just know that it needs to be a little bit more warm. So I put a little bit of yellow into it, and then face the consequence after it's already down on the painting.
Do you feel like that helps it not look overworked, or just kind of lends itself to your style?
Both, a little bit of both, I'd say, because my style definitely is impressionistic, loose.
It feels alive, I feel.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I hope that it makes it feel more alive. I feel that it kind of deadens a painting, of anybody's painting, actually, if it
Overthought.
if it's
overworked.
Overworked, yeah, and it can start to look. There's no definition for what overworked is necessarily in my mind.
Right.
It just,
you kind of just know it. You feel it.
you can kind of tell. Just the artist was like stressed about this or something.
What would you recommend if you feel like you're starting to overthink or overwork something? You're like, when you want it to feel fresh.
One easy way is to pick up a bigger brush or even a palette knife. So that forces you to, you know, even if you really want to get detailed, it's really hard to.
Yeah.
With a like a big brush like this, like I'm talking like, if you can't get out of it, if you're stuck in a detail rut, just grab a honking huge brush and try to just see if you can do those details with that, you know.
Just kind of work with that, and I could see that it forces you to not get stuck in the details.
Yeah, and I mean, I would not usually use a brush like this on a painting this big, but sometimes I catch myself needing to.
Right, just
or,
to kind
or
of
even
like
larger.
step back a bit and be like, okay, let's.
Like, you know, this one, or even sometimes I'll grab one of those cheap house painting brushes, like the chip brushes, like 50 cents each or whatever, and they're like this big, and some of my, I think, most beautiful entries in paint are with those huge
Those
brushes
big
where
ones.
I had no control.
Cool.
That's a fun challenge. And I don't know, maybe another way is just to realize that you're always practicing. I don't know, I mean, I'm sure you could say that too, right, in your illustrations?
Yes.
If you take it too seriously, you're probably going to mess up more often than if you
Yes.
just say, I can fix this later, I can do another one.
There's always an element of exploring, I feel like.
Yeah.
Using what you know, but then exploring with that.
Yeah. Yeah, do your best with what you have, and then see if you can figure out some new things, I guess, along the way.
Do you ever recommend like stepping back, like just like going to get a drink of water or something? Or
Yes, very
have
much.
you ever like,
And when I'm doing videos, I don't take advantage of that nearly as
Right.
much as I should. Which is why I got the shape, the anatomy of the barn wrong the first time. It's because I was a little bit too focused up here.
so no harm in letting your painting sit for a day and go back and looking at it.
Yeah, yeah. Although sometimes, I mean, you balance that idea with the other idea, which is that sometimes it's best to just hit a painting, do it as fast as you can, and have a singular feeling or emotion in that
yes.
painting, rather than like, oh, I was happy when I painted this and not so much when I painted
Right,
this, and then I
yeah.
went back and I was
Yeah.
a little bit stressed or out of time. So there are benefits to both. you
Yeah.
know.
That makes sense.
Yeah, because honestly, sometimes stepping back, although it'll help me with, I just always call it anatomy, with accuracy and everything. If I step back too long, longer than a couple seconds at a time, then I'll be like, yeah, I don't know, that's not working out. You know, I kind of get down on myself.
Overly stressed about it rather than just let it live. Yeah.
Yeah. This is going to be a long video, I can tell already, just because this is a little bit more detailed than I sometimes do for this size, and because of the inherent difficulties of making a video while painting.
And me asking you questions in the middle of it.
Actually, this is really fun. I really like this. This is more fun this way. I love these little cupolas up here. They're so, like, artsy.
Really
But
cool.
there comes a point in every painting where, like, I take one of those little, millisecond step backs, even if just in my mind, just a quick overall assessment. And, like, I don't know, I'm there's always that point where I find that I'm done before I realized I was. And all I was doing is just sort of like, I don't know, dabbing around to the best of my abilities, fixing things, and then suddenly I'm like, whoa, it's done. It doesn't need anything. And
That's
anything I
cool.
do will make it worse.
Unnecessary.
Yeah. I guess that always happens with any art, any endeavor, but I feel like with this, maybe this approach or this style of oil painting, it's more.
I feel like especially with your style, like that kind of impressionistic, fresh application of paint. I love it.
It's fun because I get to participate in like discovering that magic before my eyes. So I feel like I'm almost I'm watching this thing appear before my eyes at the same time that I'm the one creating it. It's interesting that way.
Like Michelangelo's just uncovering the forms from the marble.
Yeah, I love that.
But I get it though. It's cool. It's kind of like it's there. You're just finding it.
Yeah. And I'm always painting up close like this, of course, and then I'll step back and like, what? I didn't even paint that, and yet that's coming through.
You're like, how did that?
Certain things there.
Do you feel like the painting sometimes kind of tells you what it wants while you're going along?
Yeah, I used to focus a little bit too much on trying to get it accurate to the thing I'm painting, and I find that I paint a better painting when I'm responding to the painting itself rather
as well. As well as the reference.
Yeah. The references mattered less and less for me over the years.
Okay, and if you were telling that to somebody who maybe doesn't intuitively know what that would be like, do you have any tips on how to, like, while you're looking at the reference, but also trying to listen to the painting?
Yeah. Well, some artists will take all color out of their reference photo.
Oh.
So just work from black and white. Also, I noticed something that you did, Marilee, is you were drawing pictures of, like, when I saw you, it was like an old woman or something, just a stock photo, and yet you drew a kid from it, and I thought that was so cool because you were like referencing the lighting and the shapes, I guess, but totally making it your own, and I thought that was awesome. So that's one thing, is you could that's what photo references in their most ideal form should be, is just reference, like this is the way the light plays off of something when it's got other things near it or whatever, whatever the case may be. But there are certain, like, things like that you can do
cool.
to force yourself. And granted, I'll admit that I should have forced myself in time. I can look back on almost any point in my life, whether it be decades ago or just a few weeks ago, and think that probably would have been better had I relied a little bit less on the
reference.
The reference, yeah.
And I would imagine some of that comes with just practice. Like, the more you do, the more you start to kind of know, okay, it just feels right, it looks right. You know the science of, reflective light or colors bouncing off of things, and then you can kind of play.
Yeah, it does help to paint outdoors. If you're anybody that's working in color, I think would benefit hugely from painting outdoors. Because there's something that your mind does when, I don't know, it's just because you're forced to do it quickly, or you're hearing the birds chirping. I don't know, something about it just makes it like a better learning environment.
Yeah, and I mean, you're in nature. You're like with your subject, and I feel like that's got to make a difference.
Yeah, and I don't even know there's got to be some scientific or spiritual explanation for that, but I can't learn the same way indoors.
Interesting.
As I can from outdoor painting.
Well, and as we all know, photographs never do nature justice, right?
Yeah, for sure. It's so disappointing, isn't it? You go photograph some beautiful thing, and then you come inside, and like none of the aspects that you loved about it are even in there.
That's why even the best photographs need to be in art form themselves, because you can't compete with nature.
Yeah, very true. Ansel Adams is famous not because his subjects were perfect, it's because he found something that was outside of the subject too.
He had something to say about nature.
Yeah. All right. Well, I can edit this down for length and clarity, but I think it'd be best to actually just cut the video short and come in with a new one, because I don't really want to edit too much out of this. I think every step of the process is interesting, and especially with Marilee here, thank you. It's been fun to to talk about a few things that I might have missed otherwise. So, hopefully you enjoyed this. Join me and Marilee again in the third installment of this painting. All right, see you in a minute.